Hello and welcome, and thank you for coming to today's Atticus Advantage webinar, Protecting Your Estate Planning Law Firm During the Coronavirus Pandemic. My name is Mike Wells, and I am the moderator of today's session. I'll be operating things on the back end. Our presenter today is attorney and Atticus advisor Steve Riley. Steve, thank you so much for presenting this topic today. We have a large number of people who have registered, and so I know it's a very interesting topic to all of these estate planners. So thank you so much, and I'll just let you take it away so you can get that good information out.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. And welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, I guess, depending on where you're at, but good afternoon. Welcome to this timely and somewhat interesting conversation about how to manage and protect your law firm. The first thing I'd like to do before we get too deep in this, I'd like to do a quick thank you to our partner, WealthCounsel, to Dick Cross, the CEO, who's really leading that company through a massive reinvention and refocusing and really doing a phenomenal job. And to Aban, Chad, Jenny, the leadership team over there that's out there supporting us in this partnership. I know a lot of you are WealthCounsel members that are joining us, and we also have a tremendous mixture of Atticus clients in here. So we have two different communities kind of playing together for the first time virtually, which will be very interesting how this is going to work. What I'm going to suggest is that to the extent that you can, if you're somewhere where you can do this, have a pencil and paper or pen ready. You can take notes and questions, and I'm going to encourage you to take lots of notes. This session, while we're going to try and do it interactive, Mike is going to do his best to moderate questions and see where and when he thinks it's appropriate to interrupt me or bring a question online to me. I really have three goals out of this particular conversation. Number one is to make sure that you have thought through, to the extent that's possible, your readiness plan and plans as it relates to dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. And two is really thinking through how do you position your law firm, your estate planning law firm now, as providing resources and solutions to your clients. And ultimately, we're going to look at reviewing 7 strategies. We could probably spend a whole day dealing with this, but ultimately I'm going to focus on 7 critical strategies that I think at this point in time are the most important. Towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you some resources. I'm going to give you some other webinars that were taught by some very intelligent and talented people, much more intelligent than me, on specific topics particularly, that I think are good resources for you to go to if you need to dig deeper in a particular topic. And really what I want to do is kind of best I can is help you start to think about charting a course at this moment. And really where I'm at, the first thing I want to share with you, and I don't know how many of the lawyers on this on the webinar today, but I have so many friends and brothers and sisters of the bar in the WealthCounsel community and the Atticus community that are near and dear to my heart. And I just want to tell you right now, your leadership matters more now than ever before. In a crisis, your team, your referral sources, your family will look for you for more guidance than ever before. And you have to be responsive and thoughtful about how you approach this. So I'm going to recommend 3 things. I'm going to have you write these down because I'm going to create a slide for them. Number 1, take care of yourself. In particular, I want you to take care of yourself because you take care of your brain. And I want you to make sure you protect your sleep, protect time off, do whatever focusing practices you need for daily focus, whether it's a meditation practice, a spiritual practice. I want to make sure that you exercise daily. I want to make sure that you maintain proper eating and good health, if not improved health hygiene during this process. And what I mean by that is your brain functions when your body's healthy. And we need your judgment. We need your experience. We need your guidance. We need your expertise. And this is not the time to cut corners on your health, on your meditation, or your spiritual practices. This is the time to reinforce those. And usually under crisis, everybody starts to cut corners, and that's not my recommendation. 2, to the extent Atticus clients in particular You're aware of your DISC, your DISC profile. For those of people that are aware of that assessment, we use that very intensively in our community. Your DISC profiles will impact how you lead. So for those of you that are high Ds, domineering profiles, this is awesome. This is a change. This is a challenge. This is so cool. It's something that we can lead our team through a crisis. But if you have team members that are high on the steadfastness or the conscientious, they're terrified. They hate change anyhow. So while you might be reveling in the change and the excitement of this, your people that work with you may be 10 times more freaked than you ever imagined. So you have to be more hyper conscious of the profiles, personality assessments of the people around you. And 3, this is going to be, I'm sure, going to be a meme at some point in time, and people will be making fun of me, but that's totally fine because you'll remember this. Don't run naked in front of your team. Yep, I said it. Don't run naked in front of your team. What do I mean by that? Look, if you're losing your mind, call your friends, call your coach, call your colleagues, but don't lose your mind in front of your team. They're counting on you to look calm, rational. Don't throw up on them what your fears and concerns are at this point in time. This is not the point in time to share with them your anxieties. It's okay if they share their anxieties with you, that's totally fine, hear it, but don't share the anxieties back, all right? It is not a great time for you to do that. You have to keep yourself cool, collected, and if you lose your mind with your friends, you want to run naked with your friends over, an adult drink, great, virtually, great, that's terrific, but don't do that in front of your team, don't do it in front of your clients, don't do it in front of your referral sources. Keep yourself together. Your leadership is really going to matter. 2, pay attention. Every crisis I've ever been through in my life has created some remarkable opportunity that allows me to propel my team, propel my own personal performance, and propel my thinking to new heights. So this is not the time to go into the, put your head in the sand or hide under a shell or put in a fetal position under the desk. This is the time for you to pay attention, learn, and really be conscientious about what you can do to help. Terrific. Now, as we go, this has been my favorite quote of the week. So it'll appear on your screen in just a second. This is a quote from Admiral Jim Stockdale. And Jim Stockdale is well known in leadership journals. He was studied by the War College. Multiple military institutions studied Jim around the world because Jim did something fascinating, which was when he was a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War, he had the highest survival rate of men under his command in the prisoner of war camp. And they studied, like, how did he do that? What did he do? How did he do this? Because any form of leader needs to be able to help people under crisis and change. And so people that deal with crisis and change study Jim Stockdale. And they asked Jim, hey, is it because you're an optimist? And Jim goes, no, optimists died the quickest. They would believe that they'd get out or the problem would solve itself, and they would die the quickest. Oh, well, then that must mean you're a pessimist, Jim. No, pessimists died quick too. And what Jim did was he created a paradox. And a paradox means that you're holding two things equally true, even though they're conflicting truths. So here's the Stockdale paradox. You must never confuse the faith that you'll prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. So why am I sharing this with you? Well, you're a leader. You're going to have faith. You're going to have confidence that you and your team will work through this crisis. And at the same time, you have to confront the brutal truth of what's going on. You've got to confront the brutal truth of what's happening. And some of the conversations today will be brutal. I'm going to, be brutal with some of you. And unfortunately, that's my job right now. So I'm going to have to tell you the brutal truth about certain things. In the meantime, as you work through your own Stockdale paradox experience, I'm going to share with you 7 strategies that I think you can do right now to survive and then thrive through this process. So strategy 1, I want you to create a 90-day game plan. And I want you to use this theme with your team. Your team needs a rallying cry. They need to hear you say something that they believe that you believe in. So the rallying cry I'm using with my team, the rallying cry I'm recommending to all the lawyers that we coach is, we're going to survive to thrive. And we have to work through the next 90 days. The next 90 days is about survival. So I'm going to recommend you to think in a 90-day window. Who knows how long this crisis is going to last, but I'm going to arbitrarily and capriciously encourage you to say, I'm going to create a 90-day game plan, and my deadline for the 90-day game plan is July 1, and I'm going to throw, hopefully, a party on July 4th to celebrate the completion of my 90-day game plan. Now, during the 90-day game plan, the thing that I want you to focus on the most, of course, will be cash flow. Cash flow is critical. I've got a whole conversation for you about cash flow, but cash flow is going to be absolutely critical. Cash will be king. 3, you've got to think through how to manage yourself and your team. Some of us are under shelter-in-place orders. Some of us aren't. I'm in Florida. Florida's a hodgepodge of shelter-in-place orders based on counties, whereas California, New York, I think Idaho, I think there's 7 or 8 states right now where they just have shelter-in-place for the entire state. So we have law firms that are wrestling with whether they're essential businesses or non-essential businesses. During that time period, you've got to manage yourself and your team with a level of focus and take care of your clients and take care of your people. I'm going to suggest during this 90-day window, you focus tactical, not strategic. So what I mean by that is, don't worry about 9 months from now. Don't worry about 2 years from now. Don't worry about your plans to dominate the world through your estate planning law firm. Just get through 90 days. Get through the 90 days that you take care of your team, pay your bills, take care of yourself, take care of your family. The next 90 days is tactical, not strategic. And while you may have a strategic vision for your firm, my recommendation is to put it on hold. Just get through the next 90 days. Just get through the next 90 days. Cash is probably going to tighten up, and when it does, you're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And if you're trying to think strategic, like 1 to 2 years out, it's not going to help you make good decisions for the next 90 days. Everything changed. Everything changed. In 2 weeks, the world has kind of pivoted. We are going from probably the greatest economy we've seen in 50 years with a 0% unemployment rate to probably a disastrous drop in the GDP, gross domestic product, by probably 20–25%. We haven't seen unemployment numbers, but based on the law firms I've talked to, the family members in my family that have been furloughed or let go are seeing businesses shut down in a week period that were viable businesses 30 days ago. I think that we're going to see massive unemployment numbers somewhere in the 10–15% range over the next 30–60 days, which is staggering. So people are going to go through a period of tremendous fear, tremendous anxiety, and when people get scared, they hoard cash. And when they hoard cash, difficult decisions are going to be made. So it's going to be somewhat difficult for a lot of us, because we're going to say, well, now just 30 days ago, the world worked like this. Now the world's working like that. And I don't like this current world. I understand. I totally get it. Believe me, it wasn't on my goals either. So what I'm going to recommend is that you just work for the next 90 days, presume that cash will tighten up, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions about people. And I'm going to give you some advice on that in a second. Now, the cool thing about this, every crisis I've ever been through, is that there will be a breakthrough in how you operate and a breakthrough in how you do business. So pay attention, because those are going to be things that you're like, that really worked. I want to keep doing that. And you'll be tempted to going back to the old way of doing business before the crisis occurred. Now, once again, as a leader manager, I'm going to sum it up. Think tactical versus strategic with your team. Share your 90-day game plan, which I'm going to recommend to be in writing. It's not a 90-day, it's not a game plan if you don't write it out. It's just thoughts. So you have to have a written 90-day game plan. My suggestion is 10, probably 10 goals out of the 90 days at the most. And my recommendation is keep your team when you're having daily huddles focused on day-to-day or at most week-to-week goals. You can tell them that we have a 90-day game plan, this is what we're doing, but you've got to manage them day-to-day, week-to-week. Because if they're stressed, they're not going to be able to think that far. One of my rules in life is people can see in the future only as far as their current cash flow allows. And if you've got people that are worried about whether you're going to let them go, whether they're going to be furloughed, whether their spouse has been furloughed, what are they doing with their kids at home, what's going on, they're not going to be able to think. You may say, hey, look, here's my 20-year vision to grow my estate planning practice to the premier estate planning practice. It doesn't resonate for them. They don't get it. You're going to have to talk to them, and here's what I need you to do today. Here's what I need you to do tomorrow. Towards that end, I'm going to share with you, which you can download in your chat bar, a Atticus Daily Focuser. Now, the Atticus clients will recognize this tool. Those of you who have not worked with us before will not see this tool. I've never seen this tool before. Look, when you're managing your team remotely and managing yourself under stress, I'm going to strongly recommend that you spend 15 minutes a day in planning your day. So you can download this tool. This tool is pretty straightforward, but you basically plan out the day. Did you exercise? Spend 15 minutes completing this tool, the Daily Focuser. Review your calendar. Look at your cash for the next couple of weeks. Meet with your key assistant. Delegate at least your top 3 things. What are the 3 most important things you have to do today? Now, I understand some of you have 100, 150 important things to do, but as a leader in your firm, you can't do 150 things in one day. You really can't. So that's kind of like a to-do list inventory. You have to make a decision, choose carefully what are the 3 most important things, then what are the next 3 most important things. And then it may be changing your voicemail, checking your email, return phone calls during a certain time period, meet with your production staff, check your to-do list, make 1 marketing contact for the day, check your billing if you're an hourly shop, and then complete the day and clean your desk and print out your focuser for the next day to capture any solved items. Now, I'm going to suggest those of you that are in Atticus and not in Atticus also teach your team members how to do this. Because if you're managing your team remotely, I'm going to suggest that you have a 15-minute huddle every morning where each of you share the daily focuser. You share it with them, they share yours, you share yours, they share theirs, and you align with your team on what the focus is for the day. Otherwise, with all the things that are bombarding them, they're going to be all over the place. One of the problems that we have to deal with, and I don't want to go too deep into the topic today, is that your brain has 2 elements that are completely competing for attention all the time. One is your prefrontal cortex, which is your highest reasoning capability in your brain. It's where your critical thinking resides, it's where your motor skills are, it's where your judgment resides. People pay you for your prefrontal cortex, your ability to analyze and solve problems. On the back side of your brain is your amygdala. Your amygdala is the reptilian part of your brain. It's your fight or flight. And those 2 things work like a teeter-totter. And one's in control, the other one's down. So when your prefrontal cortex is engaged, your amygdala drops. When your amygdala is in control, your prefrontal cortex drops. And in this day and age, with everything that's going on, what's happening is people are getting their amygdalas hijacked by the time they look at their email, by the time they get a text, by the time they get a news alert, by the time they go to Facebook, by the time they watch, I think CNN should be renamed to the Crisis News Network. I mean, whatever it is that's going on, they're getting their amygdalas hijacked all the time. And it puts them in fight or flight constantly, so they get anxious. The only way you can help someone get out of a fight or flight situation in their head is to have them do 2 things. 1 is to speak, 2 is to write. Now, for you, if you're managing more than 1 person, every time someone has their amygdala hijacked, that means they're going to call you and have to talk to you about it. You're not going to get anything done if that's the case. So you have to train them every time they freak out about something, write it out, use this tool to get them focused, because this will help them then re-engage their prefrontal cortex. So it's a very important tool if you're managing people remotely. So good. 2, we're going to talk a little bit about this, then we're going to get heavy into cash flow. strategy two, maximize your work in process now. And there's really 4 ways I'm thinking about this. Cases that need immediate attention due to statute of limitations and pending deadlines. And I know for some of you that's a complicated issue because some of the courts are like completely shut down. Some of the courts here in Florida are basically only doing virtual hearings. I talked to a magistrate yesterday who is doing hearings via Zoom, and they're all trying to figure it out, but they're only doing emergency hearings. And so the judges are only doing emergency hearings. So basically everything that is, as most of you know, everything else that's not an emergency has come to a complete halt. So if you have something that's a statute of limitations, you have a pending deadline that you have to comply with, that goes to the top of the pile. Make sure you comply with that and get that taken care of. Number 2, look at cases that can be resolved, closed, and drive cash right away. 3, organize your cases that will need attention for the next month to 6 weeks. And then last but not least, the cases that can be put on the back burner for now. So if I'm looking at my cases, I'm going to try and organize them in these 4 categories. Now, as estate planners, one of the most critical lifebloods for us is prospect. And I usually like to call this prospects and process. I'm going to strongly encourage you not to cancel anything with a prospect to the extent that you can. I understand that we have shelter-in-place orders. I understand this, I understand that. But to the extent that you can actually shift meetings to virtual, which you can absolutely do, and do designs. You know, those of you that are WealthCounsel members, we've got some design templates in the knowledge base. You can do design templates over the phone, via virtual meetings. Goodness, 10, 15 years ago, when I was actively practicing, I was doing estate planning designs via GoToMeeting, the GoToMeeting platform with clients around the country. It's totally possible to do. But when you have somebody say, I got to cancel is bad. Teach your team not to let anybody cancel. The word is postpone, the word is reschedule, but train your team to flip cancel to reschedule and postpone. Because if they hear cancel, it comes off the to-do list. If they hear reschedule and postpone, it stays on the to-do list. And move them to a virtual. So for example, if somebody calls your office, hey, I got to cancel because the shelter-in-place order, little freak, not sure what to do. I really like to see you because, I've got some concerns based on my age. If I get sick, I want to get my estate planning done, but I think I need to cancel because I can come in. Your team needs to go, no. You don't need to cancel. What you need to do is set up a virtual meeting. And let me explain to you how this works. You're going to love it. And we're going to teach you how to use the software. And I don't care, honestly, I really don't care if you use Zoom, Join Me, Microsoft Teams, Facebook Live, I don't care. Whatever works for you, as long as it's free, cheap, and easy, and you understand it, knock yourself out. It doesn't matter to me, but I just want you to use something so the clients and prospects, can hear you, see you, and you can keep that pipeline of work moving. Now, there's a lot of lawyers around the country that are doing some pretty interesting things, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. It's evolving. The state of Florida, due to some brilliant leadership of the Florida Supreme Court, issued an order about 4 or 5 days ago saying that if you are a notary, you can virtually notarize a document via, video, which is really, really fantastic. So that means that you can actually have a notary watch someone execute their documents. So, the courts are figuring it out. I know that I talked to one of my colleagues this morning, the state of Michigan. He's on a committee at Michigan, and they're trying to figure out how to do this. And so all the states are trying to figure it out, and it's been a high priority because we know we need to solve this problem over the next 30 or 60 days. Winston Churchill's quote, never waste a good crisis, is really allowing a lot of good innovations to be made in the legal industry right now. So we hopefully will see more things develop. What we're also seeing is a very interesting process that is called the drive-in delivery. So those of you, sorry, I just got a note that Mike to speak up a little bit. Sorry guys, I'll crank up my volume the best I can. I apologize. I have, this is my 5th or 6th webinar, and I've been on the phone all week, and my voice is just going, so I'll do the best I can. Sorry. Thanks, Mike. I apologize. So drive-in deliveries. This is kind of crazy. There's a couple of law firms in California doing this, one in Michigan. And what they're doing is arranging so the client can drive up. They have all the documents on a card table or a conference room table out in the middle of the parking lot. They step back, do the social distancing thing. The client executes, the notary and the witnesses watch. The clients get back in the car. The team signs the documents, and then the team takes the documents, scans them, and then, ultimately ends up sending the original to the client and taking the scanned copy for themselves. Now, I haven't been on the WealthCounsel listservs this week. I know there's a lot of lawyers sharing different ways that they're doing this, so I would anticipate there's going to be quite a few lawyers that are much smarter than me that will find a better way of doing this. The point is they're finding better ways of doing this, so pay attention. You can literally do virtual designs. You're going to have to come up with a way to do signings and deliveries that don't involve, respecting social distancing. So it's going to be workable. You're just going to have to give up how you used to do it. And, I don't really want to, I hate to say this, but some of us have been doing it the same way for 25 to 30 years. Well, this is how I've always done it. I don't care how you've always done it. As of 2 weeks ago, you've got to change every way how you've always done it. You've got to think completely differently about how you practice. So with that, that's all I'm going to say about that. We probably could do a whole webinar just on the prospects and design virtually and delivery virtually, and I'll leave that to Yvonne for those of you at WealthCounsel, because she's doing a fantastic job on the education side for you guys and gals. Okay, let's go to 3. Protecting cash flow. So I just did an hour-long presentation on this. I'll give you the reference to that towards the end so you can listen to this, but this one's more designed for estate planners. If I look at a estate planning firm, I kind of do an asset test as far as cash, and I'm going to look at lines of credit available. I'm going to look at business credit cards available. I'm going to look at prospects in the pipeline, and those are realistic prospects versus hoped. I'm going to look at cash in my operating. I'm going to look at any AR if I've got any AR, and AR can also include unpaid stuff for probate, guardianship, trust administration, etc. It could also mean some of you do half and half on your estate planning, so it could be half that you're owed on your estate planning. And then any AR in trust. In some jurisdictions, I know we may have some elder law lawyers on here. Some jurisdictions require your Medicaid planning fees to be kept in trust until you complete the Medicaid application, whatever it is. But I want you to go and do an analysis. You can't do it right now. And this webinar will be posted for you to kind of go back and listen to, so you can kind of redo this carefully with math. But I want you to look at what's in your AR. Then I want you to do an analysis of your work in process. And this will hopefully make sense in a minute, because I'm going to give you a formula to think about. So figure out your assets, what you've got to work with for cash. And lines of credit, while technically I understand are not an asset, but for purposes of survival, they're totally an asset. And what I want you to then do is assess, where are we with non-essential expenses? And where are we with essential expenses? So for example, right now, internet access and IT support would probably be an essential expense. Being a member of your local chamber, non-essential expense, okay? So start looking at things that are essential and non-essential, and immediately, to the extent that you can, start cutting the non-essential expenses now. Because if we don't start preserving cash, you're going to have a problem. 2, preserve cash. If you've got a line of credit, I'm going to recommend you hit it now. Whenever there's been a national crisis, one of the things that usually follows a national crisis is a credit crisis. So after 9/11, after the real estate market, and even now it's starting to happen, when banks get skittish, even though they're getting free money from the government, they cut credit lines And lawyers generally, there's about 1 million of us in the US, are generally considered not very credit risk. But we're a pain to deal with when it comes to collections, and we're just totally a pain to deal with apparently as customers. Shocking, I know. But take down your line of credit now. And you may be saying, but Steve, I don't need it. Yeah, you might. And if you don't need it in 90 days and this is all resolved, you can always pay it back. My concern is 45 days from now when your bank, whether it's a community bank or a national bank, goes, you know, I think I'm nervous, and some high-level executive is going to tell the entire lending department to cut off all lines of credit to small businesses. And you're going to find out quickly as they just completely terminate your lines of credit, and you're sitting there thinking that you've got it and you don't. This happened after 9/11. This happened during the real estate crisis. It's happening now. I've had 2 situations where people had their lines pulled. And then on the flip side, I had some banks reaching out saying, hey, look, do you need money? Rare, but, and what I'm going to recommend, it's going to sound very crazy, but I'm going to recommend if you hit your line, move the cash to another bank. Because there's been some situations where where I've had clients, law firm clients, hit their line during a crisis, and the bank literally reached in and pulled the money back and turned off the line of credit. Yep, totally true. Crazy, but true. So you have to make sure that you're preserving that line. 3, prepare an austerity plan in the event of a long-term slowdown. So you want to think, and I'll have you do a little math in a moment on this, that you want to start thinking, okay, if this is longer than 30 days, longer than 60 days, and longer than 90 days, and I don't get new prospects in the door and I don't get new revenue in the door, what do I have to do to start cutting and dialing back where I can? And then 3, establish a cash flow projection system. I'd like to see you monitoring it weekly, if not daily. And what I mean by that is, where's the cash in your pipeline? Where's the cash? Where are we, if we're billing against trust, where's it at? And then last but not least, know the trigger points for making cuts and where you can make them. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So assess non-essential, essential. Look where we can preserve cash, prepare an austerity plan, establish a cash flow process where you're looking at it and projecting it, and then prioritize any additional cuts that we need to make. And I'll talk about that in a second. Okay. Next is I want you to do, now you've done all that work, I want you to do a little financial projection. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I don't have I'm not a CPA. I definitely don't have an LLM. I have probably built a practice based on the hard work, not necessarily on charm, but on hard work and hustle. So this is Steve's math. This is not high math, so you'll have to forgive me, but something tells me that about half of you are like going, no, Steve's math works perfectly. So here's what I want you to think about. I want you to calculate your financial cushion from today to July 1st. I want you to figure out all the funds in your operating account, less your essential expenses, and fill in that line. Now, you're probably not going to be able to do it now, but you can take a screenshot of this picture. You can take a picture with your phone right now if you want, or you can listen to this webinar. Once it gets posted, we'll post it out, and Mike will send it to our friends at WealthCounsel. We'll send it, it'll go up on our YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of other webinars that we've posted, and it'll be up on a particular link on our website that I'll show you in a few minutes. 2 is I want you to look at your funds in what we call your emergency account, which would basically be any war chest funds or any profit accounts that you may have put aside over time. One of the things I've always done, I've always encouraged my clients to do, is take a certain percentage of their gross. So every time they get a check-in, they take a certain percentage and put it into a war chest or emergency account, and that starts to become a cushion account. Now, some of you may not have that, so it's fine. That would be 0, obviously. But some of you may have that. Some of you may have that. And then your WIP calculation that we talked about briefly. We talked about the WIP calculation. And, I want you to figure out what your work in process is and calculate that. And then funds that you can immediately earn and hit out of your trust account. And then any funds that you have available through lines of credit, assuming you hit them, and any credit cards, because credit cards are also kind of like a line of credit. And that basically becomes your financial cushion. So we basically calculate those 4 numbers up and consider what your burn rate is, what it's going to cost you to operate once a month, over the next 3 months. And then what your either deficiency is or what your cushion is. So I'm going to tell you, it's probably the most important calculation you make this week is to sit down and do the math on this. I've been doing this all week with my coaching clients to figure out what do we got, how far can we operate, what do we have to do, and get them in a position where they're thinking how to make it to July 1st. And that's really my goal right now, get everybody to July 1st. And then other places you can find help. Some of the banks are, like I said, one of my clients sent me an email from SunTrust is actually looking to loan up to $50,000 to their clients that are, existing clients of SunTrust. And the loan process is incredibly simple. The state of Florida has done an emergency loan process. As most of you have been following, the federal government passed a significant bill last night, but I think something like $500 billion of that is set aside for emergency relief loans, but more than likely those will be administered through something like the SBA. And if you've ever dealt with the SBA in the past 3 days, or ever dealt with the SBA, what I've been hearing is that the SBA website is crashing all the time, and you can't even stay on the website long enough to fill out the paperwork for loans. So how those loans get administered and processed, I don't know, but they will ultimately be available. But my guess is you probably won't see that money for 6 months tonight. Sorry, from 3 months to 6 months at the best. There are some interesting things coming down from the federal government for tax credits. They're talking about this like being money to you. It's not money to you. It's tax credits next year that apply towards your tax return. So don't hear like I'm going to get a check for this or I'm going to get a check for that. It's going to help me with my cash flow. No. This is not cash flow money. These are tax credits that will show up next year.
Hey, Steve.
When you file your tax return. Yes, Mike.
We had someone comment in that the Emergency Family Care Medical Leave Act was changed to April 1st recently instead of April 2nd.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you. I told you guys I'm not that good of a lawyer. I just make it up on hard work. So thank you. Once again, one of my colleagues has got my back on that. So thank you. And when it comes to the tax relief stuff, look, you gotta prove it or lose it. You gotta track anything that you think is related to that. So I'm going to recommend we could probably spend an hour or two just looking at some of the things that on irs.gov relates to the coronavirus link. But just go ahead, by all means, hit that, look at some of the things they're doing, talk to your CPA and figure out what's appropriate for you for tracking. And if you don't track it, it's going to be almost utterly impossible to come back and recreate it a year from now. Great, so strategy 4, your team. So most of you will want and need to preserve your team. And one of the reasons I had you do your financial calculation to figure out what your cushion is, your ability to borrow, the healthiness of your WIP, your prospects and process, is really looking at how long can you employ critical people in your life. Now, there's going to be 2 elements to this. If you're financially strong and you're in a good position, I'm going to recommend you do everything that you can do to protect and maximize your talented people. If you want to help them, be aware that some of the people that work for you may not have a financial cushion and maybe 1 or 2 paychecks from financial disaster. And if their spouse has been furloughed, it's going to be even worse for them. So you may, if you're in a good financial position, consider no interest loans to some of your people. You definitely want to keep an eye on some of the economic relief packages, but be aware that most of them deal with tax credits next year, not cash this year. And be straight with them, be honest with them. Let them know what you can do and what you can't do. so they can have an opportunity to prepare. Now, for me, one of the things I'm having to do is have the brutal truth, be brutally honest with a lot of my clients, a lot of my law firm clients, and have a very difficult conversation about prioritizing talent if cuts are necessary. And I really look at the employed staff this way. Number one, the people I'm going to protect first and foremost are my unique, irreplaceable and exceptionally difficult to find in the marketplace. Those are usually about, I'd say 5% that I see out there. Two is great talent, the great talent that produces and collects revenue. They're profitable, they're great workers for you. So number one and number two, unique people and great talent people, great producers. We want to do our best to keep them. 3 and 4, talent that's good, but the position's easily replaced. When the slowdown, lifts, they're probably going to be pretty high on my cut list. And then anyone that's mediocre now or inefficient now, that I'm thinking about fire them, you need to fire them now. Whether you furlough them or fire them, that's totally your call. But at this point in time, if you've got anyone who's weak, anyone that's dead wood, and you are thinking, 90 days, Steve, I don't know. I might be able to make 60 days. I might be able to make 40 days. You need to cut them now. They need to go. So you need to let go your mediocre talented people, poor efficient people, poor producers, they need to go. And if you've got unique and great, keep them and get rid of category 3 and 4 quickly. Because I'd rather have 1 and 2. I'd rather have my unique people, my talented people with me over the next 90 days to 6 months, because if the unemployment rate plummets to 15 to 20%, which I wouldn't be surprised to see a 10% unemployment rate within 30 to 60 days, there's going to be a ton of talented people looking for work. So it'll be a buyer's market when it comes to finding talented people. So you will have an extraordinary level of opportunity or extraordinary opportunity to upgrade the level of talent in your firm if you survive in the next 90 days to 6 months. Great. I'm going to hit getting new clients for a few minutes. Then I'm going to talk about categories. I got 6 and 7 to hit. I've got about 18 minutes to do this. So getting new clients. Marketing is still marketing. Marketing may be different with the social distancing restrictions. You obviously aren't going to be have lunches or coffees, but the ability to create connections with your referral sources, your ability to connect with your clients for referrals is still just as good. Quite honestly, most of you aren't doing that many face-to-face things as it was. So don't be thinking that marketing should stop now. If anything, you should keep marketing going. You've never had a greater opportunity to educate, inform, reassure staff and clients and referral sources. I saw a fantastic email from one of our clients in the Dominate Your Market group. He sent an email to his clients that basically says, we're here, we're open, we can help. Let me know if you need anything. And that was his coronavirus update. I thought it was fantastic. Short, simple, sweet. We're here, we can help. Let me know if you need anything. And you can also start to think, what can I do to help my clients right now? What can I do to help my referral sources? And one of the things that we're challenging with our clients, our law firm clients, is to think of 3 ways they can reach out to their clients and help them, 3 ways they can reach out to their referral sources to help them. And when you're marketing, just remember you have your current clients, you have your past clients, you've got your referral sources, and typically I like to have my lawyers focus on the top 20 referral sources, and some of you are getting referrals from vendors. So it's marketing, if anything, at this point in time, needs to continue, and you need to keep in communication with people. Even acknowledge right now to your clients that with even with the current situation, you're on top of the case, you're working, you're not home, playing the Xbox, and you are, doing what you can do to move along anything that you can possibly do that. And if you can communicate that through social media, so be it. I am going to do a brief thank you and shout out to attorney Vinny Bonazzoli, who allowed me to borrow this cover slide. Vinny's done a great job. He did a webinar this week on the estate planning update in light of uncertainty caused by the coronavirus. I'm just sharing this with Vinny's permission to say that if you are thinking you can't market, Vinny's already created a PowerPoint presentation prior to that to his clients and taught it already on how to keep them in play and updated on things that they can do now to think about this. Now, you're going to have to experiment with alternative intake methods, electronic signups, mobile signups, drive-up signups, video signups, all these different things that we've talked about. You're going to look for ways of adding value to remote and e-signing documents, maybe doing flexible hours, weekend hours, evening hours, virtual webinars on things that it will impact them, and any type of guide that will help them dealing with home healthcare issues. And when it comes to referral sources, don't hesitate. Those of you that are not under a shelter-in-place order, use your drive time calling windows to call your referral sources. If you're in home and you're sheltered, block out a half hour each day to call your referral sources. Maybe ask them, is there anything we can do to write a blog together, an article together, or do a webinar together, anything at all that you can do to communicate or contact to them. And make sure you're all over the social media to the extent that you're supporting and communicating. As a rule of thumb, we're probably going to recommend that you do 20% relating to firm updates, 50% sharing client resources, and 30% maybe shining the spotlight on a referral source, a healthcare worker, or someone who's doing something great in your community. I'm going to skip the next two topics. You can see this, they're pretty well explained in the PowerPoint, just to go to talking a little bit about creating your new virtual law firm for a minute, and then I'm going to point to a couple of resources and then open up any windows that we have, Mike, for questions. So a lot of us, whether we want it to or not, are now practicing virtually. And so right now, if you're not remote, you probably will be remote. And if you're going to go remote, you're going to have to work through things like your telecommunication policy, how are you going to support your team working at home, how are they going to work from home if they've got young children at home, how are you going to deal with all these different issues. You've got to think through how you're going to protect your files, protect the documents that you're sending home with your clients. In particular, if they're printing stuff out on a shared family printer, they might be sharing confidential documents, not realizing it. So you've got to think through the confidentiality issues, and send them home with one of your computers that's probably properly set up, not allowing them to access your system through a family computer, to make sure that you keep good technical and cyber hygiene. Now, I'm going to reference a webinar that we did on this topic towards the end, and I'm not going to go much more deeper on this, but one of our adjunct practice advisors, Attorney Victor Medina, did an hour-long webinar on practicing virtually. I'll tell you where that's at, where the link is at, so you can watch that, and Victor did a fantastic job. I'm going to hit this topic just for a few minutes. Strategy 7 is get a little help from your friends. To borrow something from the Beatles, you're going to get by with a little help from your friends. One of the things I want you to do immediately, if you haven't done it already, is get a backup lawyer for your practice. A lot of you are solos. Get a business durable power of attorney. By the way, if you're with WealthCounsel, they have a fantastic business durable power of attorney. Do a business durable power of attorney. Give it to one of your friends that you trust, and let them give you one back, because if you get sick, God forbid, if you get sick, if you get COVID-19, someone's got to be able to operate your practice. Someone's got to step in for you. And if you go down for 2 to 3 weeks, or God forbid you go in the hospital, and you haven't, as an estate planner, thought through your own estate plan and thought through your own disability planning, the mess will fall on your lap, on your family's lap. So I'm going to strongly recommend that if you do not have a disability plan in place for yourself, one of the most important things that you can do between now and the end of the week, or the midweek next week, is get a backup lawyer for your practice and give them a business durable power of attorney so they can execute and do whatever they need on your behalf should you fall ill during this time period. So I'm going to encourage that too. I just want to do, once again, a shout out to WealthCounsel. I went ahead and took the liberty. They shared a fantastic checklist that is a wonderful checklist that you can go through, and it's really there to think through some critical issues. If you haven't looked at this checklist, you haven't downloaded it as a WealthCounsel member, I've uploaded it to this webinar, so you can actually go to the handout section and download it. It's there with the Atticus Daily Focus Service, so you can download the PDF. I think it's a very good tool. I just want to thank them for taking the time to do that. And then, of course, staying informed. These are webinars that we've done up through this afternoon. We're going to do a bevy more. All of them are free. We're sharing them freely with the legal community, and I'm encouraging anyone in the legal community to share it with anyone they want. And the March 17th one, which was the first one that we did, my partner Mark Powers and Sean McAllis did, while we're sitting here, goodness, what's the date? Whatever today is, I think might be even dated already, but it's a fantastic webinar thinking some issues through. And we broke down some by practice areas, family law, and technology tips, and to run a secure practice remotely. That's the one that Victor Medina did. Fabulous if you're looking for that. That's fantastic. Mark Powers did a fantastic one on practice, protecting your marketing pipeline, preparing for deferred demand. One of the funny things that's happening, thank you, Mike. One of the funny things that's happening out of China, I don't know if people are following the legal trends out of China right now, but if you had to make a prediction, what is the greatest legal demand going on in China right now? What would it be? Divorce. Yep, divorce cases are on a rise in China because people apparently, after being quarantined with their spouse, once they get out of quarantine, the first thing they're doing is getting divorced. So there's a rapid rise of divorces in China because of the coronavirus quarantine. It's pretty interesting. So, and then I did one this afternoon on preserving cash flow in an economic slowdown with an hour-long presentation. I did it talking about thinking through a cash flow crisis, thinking through some of the things that you have to do to preserve cash, and that's a lot longer. You can find most of these on our social media sites, Facebook, which our Facebook Atticus Advantage site, LinkedIn site, our Twitter account, and of course our YouTube account. So I'm putting those up there for you, and Mike is already posting those as well in the chat box. So if you want to check those out, by all means, feel free to do that. We're going to do our best to communicate with everyone whenever we're updating something, anytime something changes that we can help you with in your practice, we're going to update that as well. So we're trying to keep everybody up to date as much as possible. And then last but not least, as far as resources, one of the things that we're making available is a coronavirus hotline. And this is something that's manned or womaned, I guess, as the case may be, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time. I apologize to my friends and colleagues in California. It means if you've got an emergency issue, you're going to have to get up early and get on this hotline to talk about it. I'm sorry, just because of the coaches' schedules and the demand on our coaches right now, this was probably the only thing that we could work out so that everybody had some, that we could get two great coaches on the calendar at the right time to do this. And so the phone number for that is posted here. There's an access code, and this is for those of you that are members of WealthCounsel, Atticus. This is really a free service to support you and help you. It is going to be manned by Aaron, who's one of our coaches, and sometimes it'll be Sean McAllis, who is one of our founders and author of multiple books. Now, as I bring this to a close, while sometimes on today's presentation, it sounded a little gloomy and doom, it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to be really direct with you and honest with you and brutal with you, and to get you to think through these issues, because quite frankly, nobody in your life is going to tell you, do some math to make sure you can make it for 90 days. And that's kind of my job in this conversation. one of the things that's going to be great out of this, Winston Churchill's quote, never waste a great, never let a great crisis go to waste, is a great thing to think about right now, because you have the ability to shed unproductive people, and you have the ability to pick up some really, really great talented people in the next next 60 to 90 to 120 days, maybe the next 6 to 9 months. Two, it's going to create the ability to co-counsel. If you're on WealthCounsel and you are open to co-counsel, I would encourage you to post that up on the listserv that you're willing to help people in co-counsel. I think the ability to co-counsel is one of the great benefits to being a part of an organization like that, because there's brilliant lawyers all over the place that you can co-counsel with. I have used resources I've used more co-counsel resources than I can even count over the years. And then there's going to be a really interesting opportunity for some of you to actually take over and buy up some practices, because for a lot of lawyers, this is going to be the last straw, and they're going to be done, and they're going to wave the white flag and call it a day and say, I don't want to do this anymore. And there'll be some interesting practices. Not all practices are worthy of picking up, by the way. We could probably talk about that for a couple of hours, but there might be some interesting practices and opportunities out there over the next 6 months for some lawyers who are like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun anymore for me. So with that, Mike, let's see if there's any questions that you might have that I can knock out, and then I'm going to give them one last piece of advice before we wrap up for the day.
Okay, there are several questions here, and we won't be able to get to all of them because I know that Steve has to go into another meeting right after this. But any questions that he does not answer, I'll make sure that he sees them, and someone on our team will get back to you, if not Steve himself, to answer the question. One person who wanted to point out, and this is a good point, Steve, Join Me is a great piece to use for doing screen shares with your clients, because they don't have to download any software. They can look at it through their browser. So you can go to joinme.com and look at that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent advice. Thank you.
Okay. One of the biggest questions we have is, I live in a state that requires that wills be signed in the presence of a notary and 2 witnesses. No electronic signings of wills are allowed. How do we follow the requirements with respect to signing while staying safe? I have at least one client who is positive for COVID. I had another comment from another attorney in Florida that said currently that the remote notarization is not permitted for estate planning in every state yet, such as Florida.
So I don't know the Supreme Court order off the top of my head, but I would Google, Florida State Supreme Court order, video notarization, and you can probably pull up that order. It's just a couple of days old, maybe 4 or 5 days old. And if you don't think that complies, then that's your judgment call. I'm not going to tell anyone how to practice law. The second thing about that is how most of the lawyers are handling the social distancing around the executing of documents is literally wiping down the conference room table as best as possible, using gloves to lay out the document, and then getting back 6 to 8 feet and watching the documents be executed. So you have to take whatever safety precautions you possibly can to look out for yourself, your team, and then after the client leaves, you have to wipe everything down, clean it up, and follow the CDC guidelines. But everyone that I'm aware of executing documents now under let's just call it the old approach to watching documents being executed, is doing it by giving a social distancing of 6 to 10 to 12 feet. So they're seeing it, they're just not sitting at a table with them, they're stepping back. And it's funny, Mike, you can't see this, I'm stepping away from the computer screen as I explain this. So they're stepping back and letting people execute the documents that way. And I would encourage you to post it on the WealthCounsel listserv if you're a member of WealthCounsel, to hear some other lawyers and how they're doing it. But that's how we're hearing it here. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from my clients. And that's mainly what we've been seeing hearing for the past week or so. So great question. Mike, what else?
Okay, let's see here. How do you draw down credit on credit cards too? Or would you draw credit down on cards too? They have much higher interest rates versus the credit lines.
Yeah, it's great. That's your call. My gut reaction is depending when you complete your financial cushion calculation, if you can say, I got 90 days, no problem, so don't worry about the credit cards. If you say, no, Steve, I've got 45 days, I don't think I can make 90 days, then I would start using the credit cards to pay some things over the next 30, 60 days to do that. If you can do a cash advance, go for it. Here's how I figure it. You're going to pay a higher interest rate on the credit card. In 90 days to 120 days to 6 months, you may be paying some interest on that credit card. If you don't need the cash during that time period, just pay the credit card down and you paid a small amount of interest to have the ability to sleep better at night knowing you have the cash. Because the last thing you want to do is not be able to get that cash or get that credit when you need it. And that's just my, junkyard dog, been there, done that experience in crises, because what usually happens in every crisis, credit tightens and lawyers are terrible. I don't say we're terrible credit risks, but we're usually banks, and banks usually don't like us as credit risks because we have no assets. Our judgment or intellectual property is really what we sell. So you can't seize our brains. So
All right.
anyhow.
So Steve, I'll have to stop you there. I'm just going to put this out there. One person asked if anybody has a tech-related confidentiality form to have employees sign that they'd be willing to share. If you've got one and you're willing to share it, you can send it to grow@atticusadvantage.com, and I'll get it up on our social media. We are sharing other documents that law firms are sharing with us to help you out as well, samples. And thank you, Steve, so much. Again, everybody, I got this question several times. These slides will be available by tomorrow afternoon on our website. I put the link into the chat box for you to find our webinars page. And thank you again for everybody coming.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Good luck.